The fluorescent lights of Riverside General Hospital hummed softly as Natalie Brooks checked the monitors in room 412. Her patient, an elderly woman recovering from bypass surgery, slept peacefully while the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor provided a steady soundtrack to the quiet night. At 27, Natalie had spent 4 years working as a cardiac nurse, and she loved every challenging moment of it. Tonight marked her 3rd consecutive double shift this week. Covering for colleagues during the holiday season, she walked through the corridor, her blue scrubs rustling softly, pushing a medication cart toward the next patient room. The cardiac wing was usually peaceful during night shifts, but tonight felt different. There was an energy in the air, a tension she could not quite identify. She paused at the nurse's station to update patient charts when she heard quick footsteps approaching from the elevator bay. An impossible request A man appeared around the corner, moving with purpose, but clearly trying to remain inconspicuous. He wore an expensive navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary, and his dark brown hair was slightly tousled, as if he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. When he spotted Natalie, he changed direction immediately, walking straight toward her. "Excuse me, I need your assistance," he said, his voice low and urgent. His green eyes held a mixture of desperation and determination that made Natalie pause. "Are you looking for a patient, sir?" Natalie asked, maintaining her professional composure despite the unusual circumstances. Hospital security was strict about visitors after hours, especially in the cardiac wing. "Not exactly," he replied, glancing nervously toward the elevators. "My name is Vincent Harrington. I know this will sound completely insane, but I need you to do something for me. Something that will only take 5 minutes of your time." Natalie felt her instincts sharpen. She had dealt with confused family members, stressed visitors, and even the occasional celebrity patient. But something about this man's presence suggested a different kind of situation entirely. "What kind of assistance?" she asked cautiously. Vincent stepped closer, keeping his voice barely above a whisper. "In about 30 seconds, a group of photographers is going to come through those elevator doors. They have been following me for 3 days straight. I need them to believe that I am here visiting someone I care about deeply, someone who is not the person they expect. I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend. Just for 5 minutes, please." Natalie blinked, certain she had misheard. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? For 5 minutes? In front of cameras?" "I know how this sounds," Vincent said quickly, his words tumbling out faster now. "I would not ask if it were not absolutely critical. There are 200 employees whose jobs depend on what happens in the next few minutes. If those photographers get the story they came for, a business deal collapses, and those people lose everything right before the holidays." Before Natalie could respond, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Suddenly, the quiet hallway erupted into chaos. At least 15 people poured out, cameras flashing, voices shouting questions over each other. "Vincent, where is Claudia? Is the wedding still happening? Vincent, turn this way." Natalie stood frozen, her mind racing through options. Every rational thought told her to step away, to call security, to let this man handle his own problems. But she looked at his face again and saw something that resonated with her deeply. It was the same expression she had seen on countless family members waiting for news about their loved ones. It was genuine fear, mixed with hope. The look of someone facing an impossible situation, and reaching for any lifeline available. She made a decision that surprised even herself, the moment that changed everything. Natalie reached out and placed her hand gently on Vincent's arm. He looked down at her with surprise, then understanding. She stepped closer, rising slightly on her toes as if sharing an intimate moment. Vincent responded instinctively, placing his hand softly against her cheek. Leaning toward her, as though they had done this 1,000 times before, the cameras went wild. Flashes exploded around them like fireworks, creating spots in Natalie's vision. She could hear the photographers shouting new questions, their excitement palpable. "Who is she? Vincent, is this your new girlfriend? What is her name?" Vincent kept his focus entirely on Natalie, creating a bubble of intimacy despite the chaos surrounding them. His thumb brushed gently across her cheek, and for a moment she almost forgot this was pretend. There was something genuine in his eyes, a gratitude so profound it made her breath catch. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 45 seconds, Natalie stepped back. Her heart pounded against her ribs, and she felt heat flooding her cheeks. Without looking at Vincent or the photographers, she turned and walked quickly toward the medication room, her hands trembling slightly. She leaned against the closed door, trying to steady her breathing. What had she just done? In 4 years of nursing, she had never done anything remotely unprofessional. She had certainly never participated in what appeared to be a staged romantic moment with a complete stranger in front of news cameras. The morning after Natalie hoped the incident would fade into obscurity. Just another weird hospital moment she could eventually laugh about. That hope died when she woke up after her shift and checked her phone. She had 63 missed calls, hundreds of text messages, and her social media accounts were flooded with notifications. The photograph was everywhere. Every news website, every social media platform, every morning talk show. The image showed her and Vincent in what appeared to be a tender romantic moment. His hand on her face, her hand on his chest, both of them gazing at each other with what the media interpreted as deep affection. Mystery woman steals billionaire's heart, read one headline. Real estate mogul Vincent Harrington dumps fashion heiress for hospital nurse, proclaimed another. Natalie discovered that Vincent Harrington was not just wealthy. He was extraordinarily wealthy, the founder of Harrington Properties, a real estate development company worth over $6 billion. He had been engaged to Claudia Sterling, heiress to the Sterling fashion empire, and their wedding was supposed to be the social event of the decade. Now, apparently, Natalie was the woman who had destroyed those plans. The price of 5 minutes her first shift back at the hospital revealed just how dramatically her life had changed. As soon as she walked through the staff entrance, she felt eyes following her. Conversations stopped when she passed. Colleagues who had been friendly now avoided eye contact or whispered behind their hands. In the break room, two nurses who had been chatting fell silent when Natalie entered. She grabbed her coffee and tried to act normal, but their stares burned into her back. "Can you believe her?" one whispered. Not quite softly enough. "I heard she specifically requested the night shift so she could meet rich patients," the other responded. Natalie's hand shook as she added cream to her coffee. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that it had been a moment of compassion, nothing more. But she knew how it looked. The evidence was there in thousands of photographs, shared millions of times across the internet. Her supervisor, Rebecca Chen, called her into the office during lunch break. The older woman's expression was carefully neutral, which somehow felt worse than open hostility.
"Natalie?"
"We need to discuss your recent media exposure," Rebecca said. Folding her hands on her desk. "It was a misunderstanding," Natalie began. But Rebecca held up a hand. "The hospital has received numerous complaints from donors and board members. They feel your behavior reflects poorly on our institution's professional standards." Rebecca slid a paper across the desk. "Effective immediately. You are being transferred to the overnight shift in the long-term care wing. You will work from midnight to 8 in the morning, 5 nights a week." Natalie felt tears sting her eyes. The long-term care wing was where patients with chronic conditions or terminal illnesses spent their final days. It was important work, but it was also the assignment most staff avoided. It was isolated, emotionally draining, and considered a professional dead end. "For how long?" Natalie asked quietly. "Till we determine that this situation has resolved itself." An unexpected ally, the long-term care wing occupied the oldest section of Riverside General, far from the modern cardiac unit where Natalie had built her career. The hallways were dimmer, the equipment older, and the atmosphere heavy with the weight of time passing slowly. Most patients in this wing were either unconscious or too ill to engage in conversation. But one man seemed different. Theodore Walsh sat in his bed each night, alert and observant, watching everything with sharp blue eyes that seemed far too aware for someone supposedly suffering from advanced dementia. "You are the nurse from the photographs," he said on her third night in the wing. His voice was clear and strong, lacking any trace of confusion. Natalie paused while checking his vital signs. "I would rather not discuss that, Mr. Walsh." "Call me Theodore," he insisted. and you should discuss it because you have no idea what you have walked into. She studied him carefully. His medical chart indicated severe cognitive decline, but the man before her seemed perfectly lucid. What do you mean? Theodore glanced toward the door, ensuring they were alone. I worked for Sterling Fashion for 32 years. Senior accountant in their international division. I know things about that family, terrible things. When I tried to report them, they had me declared mentally incompetent. Put me in here where nobody would listen to me. Natalie felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of things? The Sterling family does not just sell expensive clothes, Theodore said quietly. They exploit workers in 12 countries, running sweatshops that violate every human rights law imaginable. I kept records before they destroyed everything else. He reached under his mattress and pulled out a small flash drive. You have already attracted their attention. Claudia Sterling will not forgive what happened with Vincent Harrington. You might as well know what you are really facing. Natalie stared at the flash drive, understanding that accepting it would mean crossing a line from which there would be no return. But she also understood that turning away would make her complicit in whatever truths Theodore had preserved. She took the drive. Natalie sat in her tiny apartment, the flash drive feeling impossibly heavy in her palm. The clock on her wall read 3 in the afternoon, but her body was still adjusting to the overnight schedule. She should have been sleeping. But her mind raced with questions about what Theodore Walsh had given her. She made herself a cup of tea, trying to calm her nerves before plugging the drive into her laptop. The moment she opened the files, her world shifted again. Spreadsheets detailed payments to factories in 7 different countries. Photographs showed children as young as 8 working on sewing machines in cramped, dangerous conditions. Internal emails discussed ways to avoid international labor inspections and how to silence workers who complained about unsafe conditions. One email chain made her stomach turn. It was from Claudia Sterling herself, responding to a manager who had reported a factory fire that killed 3 workers. Her response was cold and calculating, focused entirely on minimizing financial liability and controlling the media narrative. There was no mention of the victims, no expression of remorse, only strategic damage control. Natalie spent 2 hours reading through the documents, her horror growing with each file. These were not just business ethics violations. These were crimes against humanity, systematic exploitation hidden behind a glamorous fashion brand that celebrities wore on red carpets. Her phone rang, startling her so badly she nearly dropped her tea. An unknown number appeared on the screen. She hesitated, then answered. Miss Brooks, this is Vincent Harrington. A familiar voice said. I know this call is unexpected, but we need to talk about what happened at the hospital. Can we meet somewhere private? Natalie looked at her laptop screen. At the evidence of crimes that connected directly to the man who had asked her to pretend to be his girlfriend. Yes, she said slowly. I think we definitely need to talk. A meeting of minds, they met at a small coffee shop in a neighborhood far from the downtown, areas where Vincent might be recognized. He arrived wearing jeans and a plain gray sweater, looking more like a graduate student than a billionaire. When he spotted Natalie sitting in a corner booth, relief flooded his features. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Vincent said, sliding into the seat across from her. I owe you an enormous apology. What I asked you to do was unfair and selfish, and I had no right to drag you into my problems. Natalie studied him carefully, up close, without the chaos of cameras and crisis. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. Tell me why you did it, she said. The real reason? Vincent ordered coffee, then spent the next 20 minutes explaining his situation. His engagement to Claudia Sterling had been arranged by their families, a business merger disguised as a romance. His company specialized in developing sustainable housing projects, while the Sterling Empire had the international connections and capital to expand his vision globally. For 2 years? I convinced myself it was worth it, Vincent said, staring into his coffee cup. Claudia and I were not in love, but we respected each other professionally. I thought we could build something meaningful together, even without passion. Then 3 months ago, everything changed. What happened? Natalie asked. I discovered what the Sterling family really does, Vincent said quietly. My company was developing a workers' housing complex in Vietnam, part of our sustainable living initiative. During a site visit, I saw one of their factories nearby. I saw the conditions, talked to some of the workers who were brave enough to speak with me. When I confronted Claudia, she laughed. She said it was just smart business, that people in those countries were grateful for any employment. Natalie felt her heart rate quicken. I have proof, she said suddenly. She explained about Theodore Walsh, the flash drive he had given her. Vincent's expression shifted from surprise to grim determination. Theodore Walsh. I remember that name from Sterling's corporate history. He disappeared about 5 years ago. They claimed he had a mental breakdown, but there were rumors he had discovered financial irregularities. He did more than discover them, Natalie said. He documented everything. She pulled out her laptop and showed Vincent some of the files. She watched his face grow harder as he read through the evidence, his jaw clenching with barely contained anger. If we expose this, Claudia will not just come after me, Vincent warned. She will destroy anyone involved. The Sterling family has lawyers, politicians, and media connections that most people cannot imagine. They will attack your credibility, your career, possibly your family. They will make you wish you had never heard my name. Natalie thought about the past week, about the whispers and stares, about her demotion to the graveyard shift. They've already taken my reputation and my career, she said quietly. What more can they do? More than you realize, Vincent replied. But if you are willing to take this risk, I will stand beside you. I have resources, legal connections, and enough evidence of my own to corroborate what Theodore collected. Together, we might actually have a chance. Building an alliance over the next 2 weeks, Natalie and Vincent met regularly, always in different locations to avoid detection. They combined Theodore's financial records with Vincent's first-hand observations and photographs from his Vietnam trip. Vincent brought in a lawyer he trusted completely, a woman named Patricia Morrison, who specialized in international labor law and had been trying to build a case against the Sterling Empire for years. This is exactly what we needed, Patricia said, reviewing the documents in her secure office. Theodore's records provide the financial paper trail. Vincent's testimony establishes current conditions. If we can get workers willing to testify, we have a legitimate case for federal investigation. What are the risks? Natalie asked. Patricia did not sugarcoat her response. The Sterling family will use every resource to discredit all of you. They will claim Vincent is a jealous ex-fiancé fabricating evidence. They will say Natalie is a fame-seeker who manipulated the situation. They will argue Theodore is mentally incompetent and his records are unreliable. The media will be brutal, and the legal process could take years, but it is possible to win. Vincent asked. It is possible, Patricia confirmed. Difficult, but possible. During these meetings, Natalie found herself drawn to Vincent in ways that surprised her. Beyond his wealth and public persona, he was thoughtful, principled, and genuinely committed to making a difference. He listened when she spoke, valued her insights, and treated her as an equal partner in their investigation. One evening, after a particularly long strategy session, Vincent walked Natalie to her car in the parking garage. The city lights sparkled below them, and for a moment, they both paused to take in the view. Can I ask you something personal? Vincent said quietly. Of course. Why did you help me that night? You did not know me? You had no reason to trust anything I said. Why did you take that risk? Natalie considered the question carefully. I saw fear in your eyes, she said finally. Real fear, the kind I recognize from my work. When someone is that afraid, that desperate, it is usually because something important is at stake. I became a nurse because I want to help people in crisis. That night, you were in crisis, even if it was not a medical emergency. Vincent looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. You have no idea how rare that is, he said softly. Most people would have walked away. You chose compassion over self-preservation. I am paying for that choice now, Natalie said with a slight smile. We will fix this, Vincent promised. When the truth comes out, your reputation will be restored. I will make sure of it. The threat arrives 3 days later. Natalie received a letter at her apartment. It arrived in an expensive cream-colored envelope with no return address, Inside was a single sheet of paper with an embossed Sterling fashion logo at the top. The message was brief and chilling. "Miss Brooks, you have involved yourself in matters beyond your understanding. Withdraw immediately from any association with Vincent Harrington and destroy any documents in your possession. If you comply within 48 hours, your employment situation will be resolved favorably. If you refuse, we will be forced to take additional measures to protect our interests. Consider this your only warning. Claudia Sterling." Natalie's hands trembled as she read the letter. She called Vincent immediately. "She knows," Natalie said when he answered. "Claudia knows we are working together. She sent me a threat." "Stay where you are," Vincent said urgently. "I am coming to you right now. Do not open your door for anyone else." He arrived 20 minutes later, accompanied by Patricia Morrison and a security consultant. They swept Natalie's apartment for listening devices and found two. One in her living room lamp and another in her bedroom smoke detector. "How long have these been here?" Natalie asked, feeling violated. "It's impossible to say for certain," the security consultant replied. "But the technology suggests they were installed recently, probably within the last week." Patricia photographed everything and documented the threat letter carefully. "This is good for our case," she said. "It demonstrates witness intimidation and illegal surveillance. But it also means we need to move faster than planned. Claudia is getting nervous, which makes her dangerous." Vincent pulled Natalie aside while Patricia and the security consultant conferred. "I am so sorry," he said. "This is my fault. I should have anticipated that Claudia would come after you directly. You did not plant those devices," Natalie replied. "She made that choice. This just confirms we are doing the right thing." "Are you sure you want to continue?" Vincent asked. "There is still time to back out. I would understand completely if you decided this was too much." Natalie thought about the photographs she had seen of children working in dangerous factories. She thought about Theodore Walsh, locked away in a hospital wing and dismissed as mentally incompetent because he had tried to expose the truth. She thought about all the workers whose suffering had been hidden behind designer labels and celebrity endorsements. "I am sure," she said firmly. "We finish this." An unexpected revelation. The next afternoon, Natalie received an unexpected visitor at the hospital. A young man in his late 20s appeared during her shift, looking nervous but determined. He had the same dark hair and green eyes as Vincent, though his features were softer, less defined by years of business pressures. "Miss Brooks, my name is James Harrington," he said. "I am Vincent's younger brother. We need to talk about Claudia Sterling and what she is planning." They found an empty consultation room, and James pulled out his phone, showing Natalie a series of text messages. "Claudia contacted me 2 days ago," James explained. "She thinks I can be turned against my brother. She offered me a position in the Sterling Empire and a substantial financial incentive. If I would provide testimony that Vincent has been mentally unstable, that he fabricated evidence against her family because the engagement ended badly." "What did you say?" Natalie asked. "I pretended to consider it," James said. "I wanted to find out what she was planning. She has hired a team of private investigators to dig into your background, Vincent's business dealings, and Theodore Walsh's medical history. She intends to discredit all of you before you can bring anything to federal investigators." He scrolled through more messages, but here's the important part. She got careless in one of our conversations. She admitted that the factories in Vietnam and Bangladesh need to be shut down temporarily because of upcoming inspections. She said the company would move operations to new locations in Cambodia, where they have better relationships with local officials. She admitted to ongoing labor violations in writing. Natalie asked incredulously. "She thought she was talking to an ally," James said. "She did not realize I was documenting everything. I have recordings too, from our phone conversations. She has been incredibly specific about the Sterling family's operations, all while trying to recruit me to help destroy my own brother."
Allie felt hope surge through her.
"Does Vincent know about this?" "Not yet," James admitted. "We have had a complicated relationship over the years. I was not sure he would trust me. But when I saw what Claudia was doing, saw how she was willing to destroy innocent people to protect her family's secrets, I knew I had to help. Vincent might be intense and difficult sometimes, but he has always tried to do the right thing. He deserves support, not betrayal." Natalie called Vincent immediately, and within an hour, they were all meeting with Patricia Morrison. The lawyer reviewed James's evidence with growing excitement. "This changes everything," Patricia said. "With James's testimony and recordings, we have direct admission of ongoing criminal activity from Claudia herself. Combined with Theodore's financial records and Vincent's observations, we have enough to approach federal investigators immediately." "How quickly can we move?" Vincent asked. "I can have a meeting arranged within 48 hours, Patricia replied. "But once we submit this evidence, there is no going back. The Sterling family will unleash everything they have against all of you. Are you prepared for that?" Natalie looked around the room at the three people who had become her unexpected allies. Vincent, who had started this journey trying to escape a toxic engagement and discovered a cause worth fighting for. James, who had chosen integrity over financial gain and family loyalty over corruption. Patricia, who had been waiting years for an opportunity to challenge the Sterling Empire. "We are prepared," Natalie said, and she saw her own determination reflected in the others' faces. A moment of truth that evening. Vincent insisted on driving Natalie home, concerned about her safety now that Claudia was actively targeting her. They sat in his car outside her apartment building, neither quite ready to end the conversation. "I need to tell you something," Vincent said, turning to face her. "When I asked you to help me that night at the hospital, it was purely strategic. I was desperate and you were there. But over these past few weeks, working with you, seeing your courage and compassion, I have developed feelings that I did not anticipate." "Vincent, we are in the middle of a federal investigation. This is not the time for I know," he interrupted gently. "I know the timing is terrible. I know you probably think I am just caught up in the intensity of the situation. But I needed you to know that when this is over, when we have exposed the truth and you have your life back, I would like the chance to take you to dinner. A real dinner, not a strategy meeting. Just two people getting to know each other without cameras or threats or legal documents." Natalie smiled despite herself. "Ask me again when Claudia Sterling is not trying to destroy both our lives." "I will hold you to that," Vincent said. Returning her smile as she walked into her building, Natalie realized that somewhere between the chaos and the investigation, between the threats and the revelations, she had started to care for Vincent Harrington as more than just an ally in a legal battle. The thought both thrilled and terrified her, but she pushed it aside for now. There would be time to explore these feelings later, after they had finished what they started. The conference room at the Federal Trade Commission building felt cold and impersonal. Natalie sat between Vincent and Patricia Morrison, facing three federal investigators who had spent the past 2 hours reviewing their evidence. James Harrington sat nearby, his recordings cued and ready for presentation. Lead investigator Sarah Park leaned back in her chair, studying the documents spread across the table. Her expression remained carefully neutral, revealing nothing about her thoughts on the case they had presented. "This is substantial evidence," she said finally. "The financial records from Mr. Walsh. The photographic documentation from Mr. Harrington's Vietnam visit, and particularly the recorded conversations with Miss Sterling. However, you need to understand what you are asking us to do. The Sterling fashion empire employs over 50,000 people worldwide. They have political connections at the highest levels. An investigation of this magnitude will attract significant attention and resistance. We understand the risks," Patricia replied, "but the evidence speaks for itself. These are not minor regulatory violations. These are systematic human rights abuses spanning multiple countries and years." Investigator Park nodded slowly. "I agree, which is why I am recommending we move forward with a full investigation. However, I need to be clear about what this means for all of you. The moment we file the initial paperwork, the Sterling family will know someone has brought evidence against them. They will mobilize their legal team, their media contacts, and every resource they have to identify and discredit the sources." She looked directly at Natalie. "Miss Brooks, you are particularly vulnerable. You have no wealth, no legal team of your own, and your connection to Mr. Harrington has already been publicized. The Sterling family will paint you as an opportunist seeking fame or money. They will dig into every aspect of your life, looking for anything they can use against you. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed?" Natalie felt the weight of everyone's eyes on her. This was the moment where she could still walk away, return to her quiet life, let others fight this battle. But she thought about the photographs she had seen, the children working in dangerous conditions, the workers who had no voice and no protection. "I am certain," she said firmly. "People are suffering because the Sterling family prioritizes profit over human dignity. If exposing that truth costs me my reputation, then that is a price worth paying." The media storm. The Sterling family's response came faster than anyone anticipated. Within 24 hours of the federal investigation being announced, media outlets across the country ran coordinated stories, attacking the credibility of everyone involved. Natalie woke up to find her face plastered across tabloid websites. "Desperate nurse fabricates evidence in revenge plot against ex-boyfriend's former fiancé," read one headline. Another claimed hospital employee used confidential patient information to build false case against fashion icon. The stories painted a picture of Natalie as an unstable woman obsessed with Vincent, who had manufactured evidence and manipulated a mentally incompetent patient to pursue her vendetta against Claudia Sterling. They included quotes from anonymous hospital staff members claiming Natalie had always been ambitious and manipulative. Willing to do anything for attention, Vincent's reputation suffered equally brutal attacks. Articles described him as a failed businessman, bitter about his broken engagement. Willing to destroy his former fiancé's family empire out of spite, they questioned his mental stability, suggested he had anger management issues, and implied his housing projects were financial failures he was trying to cover up by creating distractions. Even James faced scrutiny. Stories emerged, claiming he was jealous of his older brother's success and had always resented the Harrington family dynamics. The media portrayed him as a disgruntled sibling eager to betray his brother's former fiancé for personal gain. Theodore Walsh's credibility was attacked most viciously. The Sterling legal team released medical records claiming his dementia diagnosis was legitimate and well documented. They produced testimony from doctors stating that his mental decline had been progressive and severe, making any documents he claimed to have preserved unreliable and potentially fabricated. Standing firm against pressure, Natalie reported for her shift at the hospital to find the atmosphere even more hostile than before. Security guards escorted her to Rebecca Chen's office, where the administrator waited with two members of the hospital's legal team. "Ms. Brooks, we need to discuss the federal investigation and your involvement," Rebecca said, her voice cold. "The hospital has received inquiries from the Sterling family's attorneys. They are threatening legal action, claiming you accessed and misused confidential patient information." "I did nothing of the sort," Natalie protested. "Theodore Walsh gave me information voluntarily. I never accessed his medical records without authorization, and I certainly did not misuse any patient data." One of the lawyers spoke up. "Nevertheless, the appearance of impropriety is damaging to the hospital's reputation. We are placing you on administrative leave, pending a full internal investigation. You are not to enter hospital premises or contact any patients or staff members during this period."
Natalie
felt her world crumbling. "You are suspending me based on accusations from people under federal investigation?" "We are protecting the hospital's interests," Rebecca replied. "You will continue to receive pay during the investigation, but we cannot allow you to work while these questions remain unresolved." Walking out of the hospital that afternoon, Natalie felt truly alone for the first time since this began. Her career was suspended, her reputation destroyed, and the media was portraying her as a villain rather than someone trying to expose real crimes. Her phone rang as she reached her car. Vincent's name appeared on the screen. "I just heard about the suspension," he said immediately. "This is my fault. I should have anticipated they would go after your employment." "It is not your fault," Natalie replied, though her voice wavered slightly. "Claudia is doing exactly what we expected. She is trying to isolate us, make us feel powerless." "Come to my office," Vincent said. "Patricia has news, and I think you will want to hear it in person." A breakthrough discovery. Patricia Morrison's office overlooked the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows providing a view that would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. When Natalie arrived, she found Vincent, James, and Patricia gathered around a conference table covered with new documents. We have been digging deeper into the Sterling family's corporate structure, Patricia explained, and we found something significant. The factories in Vietnam and Bangladesh are not actually owned by Sterling Fashion directly. They are operated by a network of shell companies registered in tax havens, all controlled by a holding company based in Luxembourg. She pulled up a chart on her laptop. The ownership structure is deliberately complex, designed to shield the Sterling family from legal liability. But James's recordings gave us the key. When Claudia talked about moving operations to Cambodia, she mentioned specific company names and registration numbers. We traced those numbers through international corporate databases. What did you find? Natalie asked. The shell companies are all ultimately controlled by a trust established by Claudia's father, Richard Sterling, 20 years ago. But here is the critical detail. The trust documents explicitly state that the companies exist to operate manufacturing facilities in compliance with all applicable labor laws and international standards. That language was included to secure tax benefits in international trade agreements. Patricia's eyes gleamed with professional satisfaction. By operating sweatshops and violating labor laws, the Sterling family is not just committing human rights violations. They are also committing fraud against the governments that granted them tax benefits and trade privileges based on false representations. This opens up additional criminal charges beyond labor law violations. Vincent leaned forward. How does this help our case? It means federal prosecutors can pursue this not just as a labor rights issue, but as international fraud and tax evasion, Patricia explained. Those charges carry serious penalties and are much harder for the Sterling family to dismiss as regulatory disagreements. It also means multiple government agencies will be interested in this case, not just labor law enforcement. James pulled out his phone. And I have more recordings. After the investigation was announced, Claudia called me again. She was furious, blamed me for betraying her trust. She made some very specific threats about what the Sterling family would do to Vincent, to Natalie, and even to me. She talked about destroying careers, ruining reputations, and using political connections to ensure we all faced legal consequences for daring to challenge her family. She threatened you directly? Natalie asked. Very directly, James confirmed. She said the Sterling family has ended bigger threats than us, and they would make sure we regretted ever speaking out. She specifically mentioned having judges and prosecutors on their payroll, who would ensure any charges against her family disappeared. Patricia smiled grimly. That is witness intimidation and obstruction of justice. Every time Claudia loses her temper, she gives us more ammunition. The federal investigators will be very interested in these new recordings. The personal cost, despite the legal progress, the personal toll continued to mount. Natalie's landlord contacted her with an eviction notice, claiming noise complaints from neighbors that Natalie knew were fabricated. Her car tires were slashed twice in 1 week. She received threatening phone calls from blocked numbers. Voices telling her to withdraw from the investigation before she got hurt. Vincent insisted on hiring security for her. But Natalie resisted, not wanting to feel like a prisoner in her own life. They compromised on a security system for her apartment and regular check-ins throughout the day. One evening, Natalie visited Theodore Walsh at the hospital. Using a visitor pass, since she could no longer enter as an employee, the elderly man looked frailer than she remembered, the stress of the situation clearly affecting his health. I heard they suspended you, Theodore said quietly. I am sorry. This is my fault. I should never have given you those files. You did the right thing, Natalie assured him. Those files are making a difference. Federal investigators are building a case that could actually hold the Sterling family accountable. At what cost? Theodore asked. Your career, your reputation, your safety, was it worth it? Natalie sat beside his bed, taking his weathered hand in hers. When I became a nurse, I took an oath to do no harm and to advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves. The workers in those factories cannot speak up without risking their lives. If I have to sacrifice my comfort to give them a voice, then yes, it was worth it. Theodore's eyes filled with tears. You remind me why I kept those records all these years. I was starting to think nobody would ever care enough to use them. A moment of vulnerability late one night. After a particularly brutal day of media attacks, Natalie sat in her apartment feeling overwhelmed. Her phone showed dozens of hate messages on social media. Her email inbox was full of threatening letters. And she had just learned that her nursing license was under review by the state medical board based on the Sterling family's complaints. Vincent called, as he did every evening, to check on her. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently. "I am not sure I am holding up," Natalie admitted. "Vincent, what if we lose? What if all of this was for nothing? The Sterling family has unlimited resources, political connections, and apparently no conscience about destroying people who stand in their way. What if we are just tilting at windmills while our lives fall apart? Can I come over?" Vincent asked. "I do not think you should be alone right now." When he arrived 30 minutes later, Natalie opened the door to find him carrying takeout food and a genuine expression of concern. They sat on her couch, eating Thai food and not talking about the investigation for the first time in weeks. "Tell me about why you became a nurse," Vincent said. "Not the professional answer you give in interviews. The real reason." Natalie set down her fork, surprised by the question. "My younger sister had leukemia when she was 7. I was 12, old enough to understand how serious it was, but too young to do anything helpful. I watched nurses care for her, not just medically, but emotionally. They made her laugh when she was scared, held her hand during painful procedures, celebrated tiny victories with our family. They saw her as a person, not just a patient." "Did she recover?" Vincent asked gently. "She did," Natalie smiled. "She is 21 now, studying environmental science in college. But I never forgot how those nurses made an impossible situation bearable. I wanted to be that person for other families, to bring comfort and hope to people facing their darkest moments." Vincent reached over and took her hand. "That is who you are, Natalie. Even now, in the middle of all this chaos, you are fighting for people you have never met because it is the right thing to do. That quality, that fundamental goodness, is exactly why I fell in love with you." Natalie's breath caught. They had danced around their feelings for weeks, but Vincent had never been so direct. "I know this is complicated," Vincent continued. "I know we met under bizarre circumstances, and everything since has been intense and stressful. But somewhere between the strategy meetings and the federal investigations, I stopped seeing you as an ally and started seeing you as someone I cannot imagine my life without. When this is over, regardless of how it ends, I want to build something real with you." Natalie felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I am scared, Vincent. Not of the Sterling family or the investigation. I am scared of how much I have come to care about you, how much I have to lose now." "Eddie?" "Then we will be scared together," Vincent said softly, pulling her into his arms. "And we will face whatever comes next as a team." The turning point, the breakthrough, came from an unexpected source. A young woman named Mai Nguyen contacted Patricia Morrison through a secure communication channel. Mai had worked in one of the Sterling factories in Vietnam for 6 years. Starting when she was just 14 years old. "I saw the news about the investigation," Mai said during a video call with Natalie. "Vincent, Patricia, and the federal investigators. I have been trying to tell people about the conditions in those factories for years, but nobody listened. When I spoke to labor inspectors, the Sterling family paid them to ignore my complaints. When I talked to journalists, the stories never got published. I almost gave up hope that anyone would ever hold them accountable." She shared photographs she had secretly taken inside the factory. Images of children working 16-hour shifts, dangerous machinery without safety guards, workers sleeping on factory floors because they could not afford to leave the compound. She had documentation of wages, showing workers were paid far below the legal minimum and forced to pay for their own housing and food at inflated prices that left them perpetually in debt. "The worst part is not the physical conditions," Mai said quietly. "It is the way they treat us like we are not human, like our lives do not matter. I watched my best friend lose 3 fingers in a sewing machine accident. The factory supervisor told her she should be grateful they did not fire her for damaging the machine. She was 12 years old. Investigator Park spoke up. "Miss Nguyen, would you be willing to provide formal testimony and work with us to identify other workers who might come forward?" "I will do whatever is necessary," Mai replied firmly. "But I need protection. The Sterling family has people watching the factories. If they know I am talking to investigators, my family could be in danger. We can arrange protective custody and relocate your family if needed, Park assured her. Your testimony, combined with the evidence already provided, gives us enough to move forward with criminal charges over the next week. I helped investigators identify 17 other workers willing to testify. Each had similar stories of exploitation, abuse, and intimidation. Their collective testimony painted a devastating picture of the Sterling Empire's operations that no amount of expensive lawyers could explain away. The final confrontation, the federal indictment, came down on a rainy Tuesday morning. Claudia Sterling and her father Richard were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, international labor law violations, tax evasion, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice. The charges carried potential prison sentences of up to 20 years. Natalie watched the news. Coverage from Patricia's office. Flanked by Vincent and James, Claudia was shown being escorted from her Manhattan penthouse by federal agents, her perfectly composed facade cracking for the first time as photographers captured her shock and anger. Within hours, the media narrative shifted dramatically. Stories that had vilified Natalie and Vincent now praised them as whistleblowers who had exposed corporate corruption. Investigative journalists dug deeper into the Sterling Empire, uncovering additional scandals and violations that had been hidden for decades. Natalie's phone rang. It was Rebecca Chen from the hospital. Ms. Brooks, I owe you an apology, the administrator said. The hospital's legal team has completed their investigation and found no evidence of wrongdoing on your part. Your suspension is lifted immediately. We would like to offer you a position as supervisor of the cardiac wing, if you are interested. We also want to publicly acknowledge your courage in coming forward with this information. Thank you, Natalie said quietly. I will need some time to consider the supervisor position, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. After she hung up, Vincent looked at her with concern. Are you okay? You do not seem as happy as I expected. I am relieved, Natalie admitted, but I keep thinking about my and all the other workers who lived through years of abuse while people like me went about our comfortable lives, not knowing or not caring about the human cost of cheap fashion. This feels less like a victory and more like a reminder of how much suffering could have been prevented if someone had spoken up sooner. James spoke up for the first time that morning. You cannot blame yourself for not knowing, but you can take credit for acting once you did know. Most people, when faced with the choice between comfort and courage, choose comfort. You chose differently. New beginnings. 3 months later, Natalie stood in a completely different setting. She was at a community center in downtown Philadelphia, helping to organize a workers' rights awareness event. My new Yen stood beside her, now safely relocated to the United States and working with labor advocacy groups to help other workers escape exploitation. The Sterling Empire had collapsed under the weight of criminal charges and public scrutiny. Factories were being shut down or transferred to new ownership with commitments to ethical labor practices. Workers who had suffered under Sterling's regime were receiving compensation and support services. Vincent approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He had spent the past months working with international development organizations to create sustainable employment opportunities in the communities that had been devastated by the Sterling factory's closure. Penny, for your thoughts, he said, handing Natalie her coffee. I was thinking about that night in the hospital, Natalie replied, when you asked me to pretend to be your girlfriend for 5 minutes. I had no idea that 5 minutes would change my entire life. Would you go back and make a different choice if you could? Vincent asked. Natalie looked around the community center at workers who were learning about their rights. At Mahu was sharing her story to prevent others from suffering the same fate. At the concrete good that had come from their decision to speak up despite the personal cost. Not for anything, she said firmly. Every difficult moment, every threat, every sleepless night, it was all worth it to see this. Vincent smiled and took her hand. I have a question I have been meaning to ask for months now. Remember I said I wanted to take you to dinner when all this was over? A real dinner? Just 2 people getting to know each other? I remember, Natalie said, her heart quickening. Would you have dinner with me this Friday? No investigations, no strategy meetings, no federal prosecutors, just us. Natalie smiled, feeling truly happy for the first time since this journey began. Yes, I would love that. As the event continued around them, workers sharing stories and organizing for better conditions, Natalie realized that her decision that night in the hospital had not just exposed corruption. It had shown her what she was capable of when she chose courage over comfort. It had brought her together with someone who shared her values and her commitment to making a difference. The photograph that had started everything. The image of her and Vincent in what appeared to be an intimate moment had been taken under false pretenses. But the relationship that grew from that chaos was genuine, built on shared purpose, mutual respect, and the kind of love that develops when two people face impossible odds. Together and refuse to give up, 5 minutes had changed everything. And Natalie would not have had it any other way. The end.